The little fairy who cannot fly. Once upon a time, in the heart of the Enchanted Forest, stood a magnificent tree called the Luminara Tree. This tree was no ordinary tree. It shimmered at night, glowing softly like 1,000 stars twinkling together. The fairies who lived there called it home, and at its very center was the most precious jewel in all the forest, the Celestia Stone. This glowing gem was the source of the tree's magic, allowing the fairies to fly, spread their fairy dust, and keep the forest in harmony. Among the fairies of Luminara Tree was a fairy called Gay. Her mother had given her this name because she had the warmest, kindest heart, always full of joy, despite being different. Because unlike the other fairies, Gay couldn't fly. She tried so hard, but her little wings were just not meant for flying. The other fairies soared through the air, dancing on the wind, while Gay remained on the ground, watching longingly. Every fairy in the Luminara Tree had a special gift, but Gay, she couldn't fly. And she didn't seem to have any magical abilities. Instead, she spent her days exploring the forest floor, where she befriended ants, turtles, squirrels, and even a snow-white bunny called Honey Bunny. Her favorite time of day was sunset, when the wise old owl, Oro, perched on the lowest branch of the Luminara Tree and told bedtime stories to the young animals. Gay loved to listen, but more than anything, she enjoyed helping tuck the little ones in for the night. One evening, Mrs. Butterfly rushed up to Gay, looking worried. "Gay, dear, could you watch my little one, Poppy, for a while? There's an emergency and I must go," she pleaded. "Of course," Gay said with a smile, taking Poppy into her arms. Poppy whimpered, "Mama always sings to me before bed." Gay hesitated. "I can try singing to you if you want." Poppy sniffled and said, "Yes, please." Gay took a deep breath and softly began to sing. To her surprise, her voice was like a lullaby carried by the wind, sweet and soothing. Poppy snuggled into her arms and quickly fell asleep. As Gay continued, she noticed other animals around her nodding off as well. By the time she finished, the entire clearing was silent, filled only with the sound of peaceful breathing. The next morning, the animals gathered around her. "Thank you for the best sleep we've ever had," they said. It was then that Guy realized her talent. She had the gift of song, but not all creatures in the forest were kind. There was a mischievous little imp named Sniv, who loved to steal anything that glittered. One day, Sniv overheard the fairies chatting by the river about the Celestia Stone. His eyes widened with greed. "A shimmering stone? I want it to be mine," Sniv cackled. That night, when all the fairies were asleep, Sniv snuck into the tree and stole the Celestia Stone. By morning, the tree had begun to wither. The fairies searched high and low, but Sniv was too far. He had escaped to the forest floor. The winged fairies struggled to track him through the thick branches and thorny bushes. "We must find him soon," the fairy queen declared. "Without the stone, our magic will fade." Gay stepped forward. "I will find him. I know the forest better than anyone." She set off, asking her animal friends if they had seen Sniv, but no one had. However, Honey Bunny thought for a moment, and then said, "You should ask the old badger, Bristle. If there's someone who knows, it would be him." Determined, Gay set off to find Bristle, hoping he would help her on her quest. "I might know something," Bristle grumbled low, "but I won't talk for free. Sing me a song." It's been years since I've had a good sleep, so that is why Bristle is always grumpy. He had trouble sleeping. Gay smiled and began to sing a soft melody. Before she even finished, Bristle let out a loud snore, but just before he dozed off, he mumbled, That imp sings about his hideout in the middle of the night. Listen to his song, and you'll know where he lives." Gay remembered Sniv's playful nature. He often danced and sang about his tricks. If she could hear his song, she might find him. She waited patiently for midnight to come. Then, she finally heard a familiar cackling voice. "Through the brambles past the tree, where the twisted roots will be. Hidden deep where fairies fear, that's where I keep my treasure near." Gay followed the clues to an old hollow tree covered in vines. Peeking inside, she saw the Celestia Stone. But before Gay could grab the stone, she heard Sniv arriving, singing another silly song. She quickly hid and waited. But Sniv took his time, humming and dancing around. Finally, he curled up, clutching the Celestia Stone. Gay thought he was asleep, but every time she moved closer, Sniv would suddenly stir and mumble. She had to wait a little longer. When she finally heard his soft snores, Gay took a deep breath and began to sing, just to be sure. With one last snicker, Sniv fell into a deep sleep. Gay tiptoed inside, carefully taking the Celestia Stone from his grasp. She hurried back to the Luminara Tree and placed the stone in its rightful spot. Instantly, the tree glowed again, and the fairies cheered. "Gay, you saved us," the fairy queen said. "You may not have wings, but you have a beautiful gift, that's for sure." Gay beamed with joy. She had finally found her place. From that day on, she became the forest's official lullaby fairy, singing every night to help fairies and animals alike drift into peaceful dreams. And so the forest remained bright. The Luminara Tree stood tall, and Gay had learned a valuable lesson. Everyone has a gift. Sometimes it just takes time to discover it. Every night, as the stars twinkled above, Gay's sweet voice would fill the forest, wrapping every creature in a blanket of warmth and comfort.